Well, I think when a horrible tragedy like this happens, I think whenever we're dealing with violent crime, there's a sense of outrage, of sadness, and of loss. But I think the important thing to focus on is any one instance shouldn't shape our overall immigration policy.
What would you guess Katie Porter's party affiliation is? Is she a Democrat, maybe perhaps an independent? Or is Katie Porter a Republican? This is the question before you, Kane.
Well,
For no money.
oh, no money. I thought everything was on the line.
Well, it's sure. It's, you know what? We'll have some forgiveness of something. We'll take some money from someone else and give it to you.
Well,
Yeah.
whether there's no money or everything on the line, that's
Your answer, sir.
That's some Democrat stuff right there.
That is correct. Yes. Ding, ding, ding. It is. She is a Democrat. You know, I mean, you just can't let this one little incident, this one dead girl, I mean, come on. I mean, let's ignore all the other dead girls. But you can't just allow this one dead girl, this one lawless, illegal alien who broke into the country. That's like saying after someone breaks into your home, well, you just can't let this one home invader just determine all of immigration policy. I mean, you can't. So your home was broken into one time. I mean, you're going to go get an alarm system. I mean, what's wrong with you? You're going to let one home break in, one home invasion determine. I mean, gosh, are you just so narrow-minded? That's Katie Porter, by the way. Again, Katie Porter, Democrat, out of California. That's how she characterized Laken Riley, the student in Georgia who was brutally murdered. Brutally murdered. And I don't know if you saw this story because I feel like it's important to illustrate how bad this is. Because the left, I feel like they don't get it unless you just shove it in their face. Even then, you still don't get it. Now, remember how I said she had been brutally beaten? And I kind of figured it was this bad. New details came out yesterday evening. The illegal entrant from Venezuela. I hate how New York Post immediately goes, oh, it's a Venezuelan migrant. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. You're either here in the country illegally or you're not. If I go to anywhere else on God's green earth and I enter illegally, I'm going to be arrested. That's just the way it is. I will be arrested. Bottom line, if I don't even have my documents on my person in a number of other countries, if I got stopped by the Italian police and I didn't have my documents, and I know somebody this happened to, it's their discretion. They'll detain you. You could be here illegally. They do not put up with it. So this guy is an illegal alien. That is the legal term. And it's actually the legal term in a ton of other countries. In fact, almost all of them in their own respective languages. From Venezuela. He beat her so brutally that he caved in part of her skull. Now, I just want to set the stage for you with this. The affidavits that were made public beat her so badly, he bashed her skull in, literally. In fact, the affidavit said he, quote, did commit the offense of aggravated battery when he maliciously causes bodily harm to another by seriously disfiguring her body or a member thereof by disfiguring her skull. And then he dragged her dead body to a secluded area. Her family is planning on having her funeral on Friday. And I can only imagine that the family is praying that if she is not cremated, that it'd have to be a closed casket. It would have to be a closed casket. I attended the funeral of someone some years ago. There was in a really bad car accident, and same thing happened. I mean, it just crushed their skull, and they had to have a closed casket. And the family had been hoping for an open one, and they were told, don't get your hopes up because it's almost impossible to make that appearance ready to not inflict great pain upon the loved ones during the visitation. And I can only imagine what the family has to go through, because I can only imagine, because her skull, she was beaten so badly, her skull was disfigured that the family probably, unless they were told that this was their daughter, probably couldn't even recognize her. To cave in somebody's skull. And this guy, this didn't have to happen at all. This is the price for the open border. This is the price of Democrats' open border policy. And I hate starting off the show by being so detailed in such a manner. But seriously, when are people going to understand that this has a cost? How many college kids have to be sacrificed so that Democrats can pretend that they care about people because they just allow them to come lawlessly in the border, across the border? The same Democrats that are like, well, who's going to cook our meals? And I mean, that's what they said. Jerry Nadler, Nancy Pelosi, all of them. That's the expectation they have for the lives of the people that they are welcoming across the border in wave after wave. Doesn't that sound like people who really care? Listen to them talk. Does it sound like people who really care about the lives of those coming across the border? I feel for this family because this didn't have to happen. This was a murder that was directly the result of someone being allowed to remain in this country despite the fact that they had been twice arrested, despite the fact that authorities knew that they were here illegally, and yet they released them anyway quicker than ICE could put out a detainer. I mean, it's so sad. It really is heartbreaking. Except, for the people who encourage and continue this policy. Now, in the meantime, it's Thursday that you have the president and former president who are going to be at the border. And I don't think I've heard Biden actually say one thing about this young woman who was so brutally murdered. I mean, or what about the other woman in California that had been brutally murdered, again, by an illegal alien? Or what about the young high school, college athlete that had been brutally murdered, again, by an illegal alien? And then you have Katie Porter saying, well, it's just, you just can't let one instance of murder. The woman that was in Kate Steinle was the one who was that individual, again, here illegally, had murdered Kate Steinle. And he had shot her in the back, right through her aorta. And she was there with her dad at the paramedic, or on the pier before, and he was screaming for a paramedic. They were sightseeing. She was with her dad. I mean, this is just on and on. The thing is I could sit here probably for the rest of the hour and tell you these stories of these innocent people who have been brutally murdered by people who are in the country illegally. And it's just amazing to me that they think it's just one instance, that Katie Porter can sit there with her stupid face and say that this is just one instance. And we shouldn't let one instance shape policy. You get your head bashed in once. You get your skull caved. And then you have the audacity to tell people, Katie Porter, that, oh, well, I shouldn't let this one instance determine how I'm going to think about my security and my personal space. Because that's what you're telling people. She's telling this family that their daughter doesn't matter. Well, screw your daughter and her caved-in skull. That's what Katie Porter says here. What a disgusting human being. Why do they get the nastiest looking and nastiest countenanced people sitting in these elected offices? I don't think I've ever heard anything so grotesquely offensive from a sitting lawmaker than this from Katie Porter. She said, oh, the situation is tragic and it's a loss, but it's important to acknowledge that what? What is more important to acknowledge, Katie Porter? Why don't you go have another hamburger and then come back and tell us, what do you think is so important to acknowledge? This woman got her head bashed in. If I was her family, I'd be out for blood. If you want to get more vigilantism, if you want to get any vigilantism, this is the best way to do it. Because these lawmakers either better enforce the law that we taxpayers pay for them to do, or people will take care of it themselves. And I promise you're not going to like that last part. especially when it's people who want to be left alone. And by God, if you're not going to help them be left alone, they're going to make it to where you leave them alone.